Minute. Yeah, you take a minute after then I just talk about the conference. Yeah. So perfect. So that's the conference, Mediation Vision 2026. So whatever discussions we have, we'll have more elaborate discussions throughout the year. And of course, there are no conclusions. It is just evolution. So all the sessions are on YouTube, so people can watch it there. And now, Gabriela, if you're set, we can move forward on this interesting topic that you have come up with.
So, good morning or good
Good.
afternoon or good night, wherever we are in the world. And that's what I love about talking to you. We're always everywhere in the globe.
Exactly. Sometimes I forget my evening. So
So,
psychological safety and mediation, Gabriela. But like you, so you know the drill. You have to, of course, tell us about yourself, and then we go from there.
okay. So, first of all, I am your friend
Yes.
because throughout these months, maybe a year that we have since we have met,
Yep.
I have learned to admire your work so much and to understand how important you are to build connections throughout the globe. And mediation is all about this link, this human link that brings us together no matter the distance, no matter the time zones or whatever. So thank you so much.
That's amazing. But why did you not come in the morning? You would have made my full day. Now you only made my few. It's only few hours left in the day. So you made my day, Gabriela. Please, these are such nice things
Because
to
my
hear.
day is just starting. So
Now these are such nice things to hear. It's just, I don't know. Sometimes I just feel, is it me? Is she talking about me?
yeah, because you embody this spirit of connectedness that human beings are so much in need of learning and bringing up the best in people. We are all on earth, we're all good and bad. Nobody is perfect. The few who were close to perfect didn't end up very well. So I think human beings in general are kind of afraid to get there. And it's about time that we use the fear just to keep alive, but then we look at it, we say thank you so much and goodbye, because now I need to give my best. And giving our best is about connecting to fear just enough to keep alive. And this has to do with our subject. So it is interesting for us to understand that the first feeling that human beings had of self-awareness, connected to self-awareness, fear came. Fear was our first protector. Fear and the reaction we have upon the feeling of fear, and the much or the less control we have about how we react to fear, is what made us the race, the species that prevailed on Earth. If we didn't fear, we wouldn't have made so many decisions that led us to being gregarian, to caring about the others. So this is how important fear is. And there is a scientific fact that I like to mention when I talk about psychological safety and mediation, that incredibly or not, the anthropological milestone of the existence of a humankind that is aware of itself, this was a scientific question in a scientific classroom. And of course, the student who made the question, what was the first milestone of humankind? He was expecting some technological tools, some weapons or some design on caves or whatever. But the answer couldn't be more mediation-like. The answer is the first fossil, the first bone that was found that belonged to an adult. He broke the middle of the main bone of the leg. I forgot the name in English, femur.
Femur from,
Yeah. So an adult who had the femur broken and healed. So that means that this is the first registration of someone who was not left behind to die. Because before that, we were animals just like the others who would, of course, you don't want your companion, your family member, or whoever, you don't want them to die. But if you have to choose between yourself and the other one, you are driven to choose yourself. So that healed bone meant that someone was important enough for someone else, for this someone else to care until he or she was able to walk again. They were nomads, so of course they needed to walk to survive, because sooner or later the winter would come and they would be stuck on a cave without food and so on and so forth. So that meant love for the first time. And it is in this very point of something that is within us that we need to connect in order to be able to do something better than we could do alone. And this is how we human beings prevailed over other animals who are stronger, faster, and everything else more than us. So nowadays, so a huge jump in time, we live not only in our families that we didn't choose, by the way, we don't choose consciously the families where we are born. And sometimes we are very lucky and we are born in a family that is harmonious, that we feel belonging, and that we admire our elders. And sometimes we are born in families that we resent, we are ashamed, we hurt because of so many things that happened since we were so young. And no matter how we feel about our families, we belong. We don't have an option. It is very different from the belonging feeling in a corporation where we work. We, as adults, choose, consciously or not, to belong in that group. We have a little bit of free will. Many times we feel we don't have free will because we need the salary, we need to pay our bills, and the market is complicated and so on and so forth. So many times we feel like we are slaves in our jobs. That happens too. But willing to be there or not willing to be there, it is a game of survival. Competition is still very much motivated by the behavior of those who are above us and who may decide our fate in the company. So when we feel we need to belong, but there is a huge risk that we may not remain belonging for a long time, like most people feel in their jobs, we will do almost anything to survive in that group and to only live in case and when we want to go to something better. And many times we are on a good environment, on a good team, and many people still are always looking for something bigger and better. This is also something we have learned since we were very young. So tension is always in the air. Understanding that our survival depends on connectedness, that our survival belongs on the feel, depends on the feeling that if we are hurt, we need someone to take care of us until we heal. And if someone from our team is hurt, we should be able to provide the same. So this is for any group. Do you agree?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I have to agree with, okay, who can disagree with Gabriela? Tell me that. Who is that
You.
person?
You can. And if you do, please say so, because that's how we get better too. So in most corporations, in most work environments where people are in this permanent tension, consciously or not, people learn to refrain from saying difficult messages. No one wants, in general, to be the messenger of something that is not nice. So they just hold it to themselves. Sometimes a doubt. So I cannot say that I have a doubt because it will not look professional. And if I don't look professional, I may be replaced very, very soon. And sometimes it's not about a doubt, it's about a certainty. And I look at something that either a colleague or a boss is doing, and I know it could be better. But I don't want to be the one to tell them that what they're doing is not the best that it could be. Because first, I may be wrong. Second, they may not like it. Third, they may think that I want their place. Fourth, I may be fired. So no matter how high we are in this scale, but the behavior of keeping to ourselves the difficult messages is more often than not the chosen behavior of survival in that kind of environment. And in the families, it's not so different. It depends a lot on the power scheme of each family, but in most families, we may refrain from saying what we believe is the truth because the others may not like and may humiliate us or may exclude us or may do something that means that we are not welcome in a way. And nobody wants to be in that place. So in order to really say whatever you see is best, you need either one of two things. Either you need to have a very, very high self-knowledge, intellectual, emotional, and collective intelligence, all of these together, which is not very likely in our humankind at the moment. And you need to be courageous enough to maybe not be welcome, maybe be misunderstood, maybe be excluded. So when I was very young, I used to believe that I would say my truth. I would do what is right, no matter the price. This is a way of starting a life that is not very common either. But then I learned that whatever price is always too expensive. So of course, I'm not talking about kamikazes. I'm not talking about being overly sincere and hurt people in a way you wouldn't want. So when we talk about being able to say what you think is right, it's not about however, to whomever, whenever. And it's not either about strategizing to a point where you lose your natural way of being. It's always about balance. It's always about finding a way to say what is important to you, to exercising your sovereignty, but taking care of the others at the same time. So many times you are not able to just say out loud what you're thinking because it's not the time. You must wait for a time and a moment and a circumstance where there is a higher, sometimes a little higher possibility of being heard in a good way from a good place. So this exercise requires maturity. It's not about being old, it's about being mature. Because many people grow old without maturity. This requires a lot of exercise for the limbic brain. The limbic brain is the part of our brain that processes emotions. When we are very young, we have a very, very, very short time to choose in which way we go once we are hit by a stimulation. All our exercise of becoming mature depends, of course, it depends on how we came to Earth, whatever feeling we have in terms of this eternal soul that I believe we are. But it also depends on a lot of chosen exercises in this lifetime so that we can have a longer time to process the stimulation from the environment and make a conscious decision about the way to go, about when to speak and when to keep silent until the moment where you can speak. It's never about reframing forever. It's always about choosing the best way possible in your abilities so that you can be yourself, respect yourself, but also respect the others. So these require all these. I'm still in option number 1. All this is about an inner process of becoming more and more the best of ourselves so that we can give the best of ourselves to others. And this is a work for many lifetimes. It will not be in one. It will not be for everybody that we can see with our eyes today, but this is the objective. And then finally, the second possibility is when the environment is welcoming to diversity. Diversity of every kind. Diversity of not only our physical and behavioral characteristics, but also our original backgrounds and experience and culture. So dealing with diversity, which is more and more often a reality to everybody around the world, we don't have boundaries that are clear anymore. We are living in we used to live in a VUCA world, vulnerable, uncertain, chaotic, and ambiguous. And now, after the pandemic, we live in a bunny world. Bunny is brittle, anxious, non-linear, and the bunny is, I think it's
Let's see.
like impossible to understand. It's something like that. Anyway, whatever was VUCA became much worse in the bunny settings. It's impossible to be able to plan 5 years ahead. Many times I have this conversation with my husband since we have a 10-year-old child. And many times we want, I also am a big fan of planning. But I realized that 2 years may be completely out of sight. 5 years, it's an eternity. It's impossible to predict what this girl, my daughter, will go through. It will be a completely different world in relation to mine, to everything I went through when I was her age. So I need to go to the roots, to the essence. I need to help her be able to learn how to learn, to have principles that are eternal. Because if she has those very solid, and I'm not promising that she will have, well, all I can do as a mother is to offer what I know, but focusing on what can be useful, or at least I believe, and being there for her no matter what happens, and that she knows. But apart from that, what the specific circumstances she will go through, I have no idea. And I have to be okay with having no idea so that she feels safe when having no idea. Because she knows I have survived much longer than she so far. And we are examples. We're living examples. And this is the only thing that is really durable that we can leave to our children. And I'm talking about children because I want to go back to psychological safety in organizations. And when we are a leader in an organization, the relationship with our led team, it's always about examples and taking care. And when people feel that they are taken care of to the best of our abilities, of course, I'm not their mother, so I'm not going to ask them if they have brushed their teeth, and I'm not going to send them to bed or give them vitamins in the morning. But mutatis mutandi, so comparably, I need to ask them how they are feeling today. What is the best that they can do in a circumstance? What would they want to do when there is a choice? When there is a choice, it's not always. So I need to help them go to the best of themselves so that they can be the best for the company and they can feel fulfilled enough by the good things in order to embrace the hard things. So this is leadership. And psychological safety necessarily starts with leadership. But a leadership that is not, many times it's not the official leader. It's not the bureaucratic leader. It's whoever is able to influence others so that others can do their best. And we can do that in any place of the organization. If we serve the coffee, if we clean the floor, whatever we are doing there is to help others feel as good as possible in that environment so that they can give their best. And when we see something that could be better for the benefit of the whole, we should be able to speak it out loud. And this perception that is not intellectual, it is most times unconscious, of being able to speak out loud your truth or not, most times come from the unspoken scheme of being punished or being compensated for whatever you did. So in order to help people give their best, a leader must not only listen, but really consider and give a feedback to people's contributions. An example is what really works for that purpose. You can have beautiful mission, vision, values on the wall. You can have perfect codes of ethics, but nothing replaces examples. So if you see a colleague being humiliated by something he or she did, you will not do the same, nothing close to that, because you don't want to be in that place. So even punishment in an organization must come with the understanding of what led to it. If people cannot understand what happened to a colleague, fear will probably come back from the cave and be their guardian. So they will shrink instead of expand. And the whole organization shrinks with it. And now I would love to hear something from you, so that after in the next chapter, I talk about mediation connected to all of this.
I'm waiting for that to happen. First, we'll go through that. Look, you've laid the groundwork to it, everything, why it's required and everything. So obviously now we have to move to the next stage. How? That's what we're waiting for.
Yeah. Mediation is the key. Not mediation in the strict sense, but in the broad sense. For many years in my life, I served as the director for the Brazilian Center of a global NGO. At the time, it was called Partners for Democratic Change, and then they shift the number to Partners Global. So they are still existing all over the world in more than 50 countries, and they do a beautiful work. I say they because I'm not working with them in Brazil anymore for many reasons, but they are great. And the founder of this organization, he was also one of the pioneers in mediation in California in the late 60s, early 70s. And he was a very wise man. His name is Raymond Schoenholtz. And the current president of Partners Global, Julia Roig, is also a very, very brilliant person. But anyway, Ray, he did an academic work showing that the main difference between, in terms of incentivated behaviors, okay, the main difference between a democracy in an authoritarian government is how much possibilities of being heard the population has. And that applies on the proportion to corporations, to families, to any group. So if you are able to say your truth, you will be much more likely involved in conflicts, because your truth may not be the truth of others. So if they are also able to say their truth, there will be collision. And of course, we're talking about a humankind that is still very ignorant about ways to include instead of exclude that who say something that you don't believe yet. Maybe because you didn't understand enough, maybe because they didn't express well enough, maybe because their survival mode is one of exclusion, or your survival mode is one of exclusion. Once we understand that we don't need to be either or, and we can find ways to live on the and, not or. I am Brazilian and Lebanese, for example. I don't need to choose. This is all in me, and there's room for much more. I can be perfectly in harmony with people who don't believe in God, and it's okay. Because for me, God is everything. But many times people will be loving and caring and atheist. And for me, this is God as well. What matters is how people are helping life on earth and in our small environment be better or worse. And if they're making it worse, in my point of view, I can be courageous enough to tell them, I think it could be better. It's not, I think it's wrong. It's, I think it could be better. Because everything that we find bad, most times is a matter of ignorance in some people involved. I don't know who, depending on the situation. And ignorance or enlightenment is about maturity and self-awareness, or not. So the better I am, the more I help people be their best. This is the basic for everything. And I can only be my better if I am able to say whatever is important for me in a protected environment, in an environment where my truth doesn't need to collide with the other person's truth, even if I disagree. We must agree to disagree. And that's okay. That is part of the process. It doesn't need that I have to like the other person. It means that I have to respect the other person. I have to coexist. And this is exactly what mediation is for. So it doesn't matter if we are talking about a large scale of the UN, about one country in a specific, one state, one village, one neighborhood, one household, one family, a couple, to friends. It's all the same. We need to have a safe harbor where to go when all our possibilities of negotiating our differences have not been enough. So in a corporation, because psychological safety is a concept that is mostly related to corporations, organizations, work environments. So in a work environment where you have, for example, an ombudsman or a mediator, it is much more likely that people who are not feeling welcome within their teams, because not every leader has this ability. In most organizations, there are a lot of people who are promoted to a people management role because they were good technicians. And as technical manager, they were great, but as people managers, they are not great. This is very common. So many times people don't find this safe harbor within their teams, and they need to have a place to go to without fear. And it cannot be the human resources team, because human resources, they can be great, but they have their own agenda. They have their own targets and goals, and they have to report to the top management, to the C-level manager. So if they have an information that someone did something wrong, of course it will be held against this person, because most organizations, and of course I hope there are so many that I don't know, but maybe all that I know so far, have evaluation schemes. They're very narrow, that cannot look at people as a whole, that cannot, unless it's a very small organization, but on a larger organization, it is indeed impossible to know deeply everyone and what is going on in their lives. So if someone has a parent or a child or a husband or a wife or a significant other, whatever, that is sick, that is in need of care, of course this person cannot come to work as if there was nothing outside. If someone is sick, and we know that we are on a time on earth where so many people are immaterially sick, all the psychological, psychiatric diseases are a taboo. People don't want to talk about, they are ashamed of it. So the less they talk about, the more they hide it, the bigger it gets. And when you know, people are exploding because it will have to go somewhere. So if they don't have a safe harbor to go to, and this safe harbor includes informal counseling, like ombudsman normally can give, under confidentiality. Of course, just as in mediation, you cannot keep confidential something that may become a crime imminently, or that is already hurting someone, hurting physically and emotionally. But most things that, if there is an early warning system where you can go to before the problem is too big, of course, the ombudsman or the mediator or the leader, if the leader has this legitimacy, will be able to help the person before the problem gets unsolvable. So early warning and safe harbor under confidentiality are key elements. And mediation is the natural next step when an issue doesn't belong to just one person. So if I have a problem with Vikram, which I hope will never happen.
I was just going to say that. That's not, we're not going to even give that example.
Yeah, that would be a terrible example. But I have done mediations between mediators. So that we're humans. But anyway, just as an example, if I have a problem with you and I feel that I cannot talk to you freely, either I am afraid of you or I am afraid of myself in front of you because of the things that you, the red buttons that you press inside of me without knowing, most of the time. I need to have someone to resort to. And when we go to this someone, the ombudsman, for example, this person may help me just with myself, like in under like a coaching, not therapy, because we're not therapists inside the corporation, but like a coaching, or just like a safe harbor to listen. And many times when people are able to speak, they are able to listen to themselves. And this is enough for some cases to help them reorganize and make a better, more well-informed decision about whatever they want to do next. So the work can be done with just one person. And if this person is very afraid, for example, when there is a problem with the boss and the person doesn't want to go to the boss or mediate with the boss because he or she is afraid of losing the job, and the environment in the corporation allows that, because this is also an issue of policy and how people practice the policy mostly. So if that person is able to replace his or herself inside his or herself, that may be enough. But if this is not possible, because actually the problem is in the in-between, mediation is always the best path. But the person who first goes to ask for help needs to understand what mediation is, and even in mediation, be able to trust the system, not the other person, for fairness. And then mediation can do its best and help bring the other person to the table, of course, if the other person agrees. But once they are there, they are co-creators of the future. It's not a one-person judgment. It is a co-creation of how we can coexist. And that brings, again, as a cycle, psychological safety. Because in that environment, mediation has always this education possibility about how to talk in difficult situations. So once you have been through the experience and you learn how to say your truth in a way that the other person can listen, you go back to your daily life, but you're not the same. You are at least one step further away in this possibility of next time not going until the point of impossibility of communication. And this is psychological safety.
Good. Yeah, that's the thing with when you talk, we just listen. We don't have any questions to ask.
That's horrible. It means that you're not feeling safe to say your truth.
No, there has to be. No, I'm just thinking. Look, in terms of I don't know. There was one session we had on mediators as leaders and leaders as mediators. So I think that's something that we, of course, maybe have to have another discussion with you on that. So we need that. But in terms of the ombuds and the psychological safety and having a mediation situation, how do you look at them differently?
Ombudsman, psychological safety, and mediation.
Yeah.
Okay. So psychological safety is the goal, is the objective, is where we're heading to. Ombudsing and mediation are tools to get there, are transportations to get there. Ombudsing is more individual. When someone comes to the ombuds to ask for help, the main role of the ombud, it's more broad. It's to listen to the person and help the person be better informed in the next possible steps he or she can take. Not deciding for the person, but helping the person have a better condition for a better decision. And then there are many tools that the ombudsman can use, including mediation. But mediation will only be the case if and when the situation that the visitor, we say visitor, that the visitor brought necessarily requires the participation of other people. And then these other people need to be invited and be able to say yes or no. But of course, without any hypocrite assumption. When you are in a corporation and you get a call from the ombudsman or the mediator saying, oh, I was visited by so-and-so who told me about a situation where you were also a part, and I would like to suggest a mediation. He or she already agreed. Would you agree? Or would you like to talk to me before you make a decision? It is very unlikely that this person will say, no, I don't even want to hear about it. I don't care a bit. Of course, because having this structure means that the company cares about relationships. So you don't want to be the one who says, I don't care, because this is what the company is showing that is important for the whole. So at least come and listen is what most people will do. Even if after a conversation with the mediator, also individually, the person will say, I don't see any future in this mediation. I don't feel comfortable to go to this mediation. So I prefer to find another way. And that's okay. The ombudsman cannot oblige anyone. And another thing that is very important to understand is that the ombudsman needs, or mediator needs, to work under confidentiality with the visitors. So when the visitor comes, he or she must know that whatever he says is safe there. It's the first experience of psychological safety. And of course, it has to set the example. But the ombudsman needs to report normally to the higher level of management, the board or the top CEO or something. But so how can the ombudsman help the organization understand patterns, especially problematic patterns, without breaking confidentiality with the parties? One thing is which is very similar to basic mediation. Okay? One thing is someone came in and said, I'm about to kill myself. So me as the ombudsman cannot keep secret about it. I have to tell the authority, of course. And that has to be very clear to everybody before they come. Another thing is I deal with the problem, an interpersonal problem. I help them resolve the problem, or I don't help them resolve the problem because they don't want to go ahead. They just wanted to come and put it out, and that's their choice. It's okay, I have to respect. But when I report to the top management, I need to report on trends. If I don't have a high volume of visitors, I need to find a way to say what is important without disclosing who came to me. Otherwise, I would be breaking their trust. And this is very difficult because you need to have a top management that deeply understands and cares about relationships in order to agree with this creature in the organization who knows all the rotten issues of everybody and relationship and will not open the mouth to say one thing to the top management. And the top management is paying their salary. So you have to have a very mature organization in order to really have a functional ombudsman. It is easy to have an ombudsman just for the records, just to show the market that you have an ombudsman, or because it's mandatory. In some industries in Brazil, ombudsing is mandatory, but mostly in the relationship with consumers. This internal ombudsing for the staff is never mandatory. It is an option for the organization. Just having it is already a sign of maturity, but it's not enough. The ombudsman needs to be in the right place, in the right conditions, to be autonomous, independent, and absolutely confidential. Normally, what is done is to give the ombudsman a mandate. And during the mandate, he or she can only be fired by the decision of the main board or CEO. So it's something that means that if you are fired, they need to have very strong reasons. Otherwise, it will be a terrible message for the whole staff.
Now, the only thing, Gabriela, is that of course we have to fix up your session on systemic constellations. So when are you going to give me time for that? That's one. Because there's a question that Victor Baba has. I don't want to pick that question up till I don't have this surety that you will be able to give me time, because the next session is going to start at 8. We won't have too much time in between. So how are we going to do this? Do you want to take that question or not?
Yes.
Okay. Management of diversity has become a thing. What strategies would Gabriela recommend for better management of diversity?
Well, you have to have these, basically it's what everything we said. You have to have these safe harbors where people who feel prejudiced against can go there and say, I'm feeling this way. How do I deal with it? Should I face the other person? Should I bring the other person to a mediation? Should I just understand it with myself? Because many times also, and I'll give a very concrete example and real. One day I had a person in my team who responded to me, and she was like my right arm, my deputy. Whenever I couldn't be in a meeting, she would the person to go to the meeting and then report to me. And one day she went to a meeting and I asked her afterwards if she had conveyed the message that we had spoken about. And she said, oh, he, the manager from the other team, didn't let me speak. I said, why? No, because he's a man, I'm a woman, so I was not able to speak in the meeting. I was the only woman in the meeting. And I said, but I'm frequently the only woman in the meeting, and I always speak. And she said, but you are the ombudsman. You are top manager, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, so this is not about gender. This is you didn't feel that you had enough power because of hierarchy to talk to another manager. I can understand that, which is very different than being a gender issue. She said, yeah. So then in the next meeting, I went with her and I empowered her in front of everybody so that in the further meetings, she could be heard. So many times when we feel that it is a diversity issue, it can be something else. And we have it mixed inside of us. So the first thing is to clarify it to us if it is actually a diversity issue or not. Clear the way. And for this, in order to speak it, you have to have a safe harbor. And ombudsing, internal lines of search for help, hotlines, are ways of helping people have this safe harbor. In a hotline, you normally can do it anonymously, even to the ombudsman. The problem is how to get there. The hotline is normally, you have a link to a platform that is external from the organization where you can be absolutely certain to be anonymous. So this is also a way to deal with it. But in a very short way, the only way is to find, to offer possibilities of people being heard. And so they can deal with it.
Perfect. And of course, he's very happy with your statement that an example is the best model of values. It cannot be substituted by plaques and vision boards attached to walls.
Exactly. But you need to have it in a very human way. So the problem with the rules, the norms, is that they are just paper. You need to practice the rules and norms.
Absolutely. So I think, look, in terms of closing, I don't think there is any, everything was closing and it was the opening. So if anything you want to close on, definitely, please. And then we'll close the session and then we'll move on to your fixing up schedule on lots of others, I'm sure, topics that you would want to discuss. So in this session, whatever. Yeah.
I just want to say thank you for letting me speak my truth and talk about the things I believe and where I believe I can be useful.
Thank you very much for speaking the truth. And okay, you had a safe space. Let's just look at it that way. So, so that was nice. So thank you very much. And obviously, it's always a pleasure speaking to you, seeing you. So I don't have to keep repeating that. You know that. So